Harper had done the math. Stay invisible for 45 minutes, then slip out the side exit near the kitchen. The problem was the text. It arrived on her clutch, not her phone, her clutch, which meant someone knew her schedule better than her calendar did. A screenshot. Her face. A timestamp from 2019. Below it, 5 words in a number she didn't recognize. Your secret doesn't stay buried. The silk chair beneath her was rose gold and expensive. The wedding was expensive. Everything about the Harrington Coal Union screamed old money pretending to be new. Harper was the designer who'd done the bride's custom gown. She'd been invited as a professional courtesy, the kind that meant, sit near the back, leave early, your presence is noted but not expected. She slipped the clutch under the tablecloth and kept her hand steady. The champagne flute in front of her caught the chandelier light, and for just a second she saw her own reflection. Compact, unmade, a woman already halfway to the exit. That's when the music shifted. The ballroom smelled like white roses and butter sauce. Servers moved like they'd been choreographed, weaving between tables with the precision of dancers who'd learned early not to spill, not to be heard, not to exist too much. Harper had designed enough event gowns to understand the unspoken grammar. The bride wore silk and diamonds. The guests wore the bride's reflected glory. She was neither. The reception hall had soaring ceilings, cream-colored walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's financial district. Rain had started an hour ago. Outside, the streets gleamed black and silver. Inside, 300 people clinked glasses and laughed at toasts that weren't funny. Harper had one objective: leave without being seen leaving. The chair beside her scraped. A man sat down, not one of the groom's fraternity friends, not a relative, someone else. He wore a midnight blue suit that fit the way expensive tailoring does, like it had been stitched directly onto his intentions. His cufflinks were silver, minimal. His watch was the kind you didn't have to brag about because it did the bragging for you. You look, he said. Like you're planning an escape. Harper didn't turn. I'm planning nothing. I'm being polite. By sitting entirely alone, half-turned in your chair, watching the kitchen door like it's a lifeboat. She risked a glance. He was older than her by maybe 15 years, with the kind of face that suggested too much boardroom and not enough sleep. His eyes were alert in a way that made her nervous. Do I know you? Grayson Hale. I was at the ceremony for exactly 7 minutes before slipping out. The vows included a line about "till death do us part," and I found that statistically aggressive, so I came back for the free champagne. Despite herself, Harper almost smiled. The flutter of it died when the server passed, and in the hollow second of distraction she checked her clutch. The phone was still dark. The text was still there, waiting. There's a problem, Harper said quietly, with sitting alone at other people's celebrations. It's an invitation. Grayson turned to look at the room. The bride was mid-laugh, head tilted back. The groom's mother was dabbing at her eyes with a silk napkin. The uncle at the next table was already 3 drinks in, swaying to the string quartet's cover of All of Me. An invitation to what? To be interpolated, to become a character in someone else's story. Oh, that's Harper. She's single, she's sad, she's waiting for someone, she's lonely. Fill in the blank. Women alone are always incomplete until someone narrates them differently. Grayson didn't respond right away. He watched the room the way someone watches a city from a plane, detached, cataloging. So your escape plan includes sitting perfectly still so no one has anything to say about you. Exactly. That won't work. Why not? Because, he said, and now he was looking at her directly. I'm about to ask you to dance. And when you walk to the floor with me, every woman in this room will have a story to tell. I'm counting on that. I need that. Harper's hand tightened on the napkin in her lap. No. You haven't heard the proposal. I don't need to. I'm not. She stopped. The bride's mother was staring. 2 groomsmen had turned. The uncle had noticed. We're being watched. Good. The best time to disappear is when everyone's looking at you. The band shifted into something instrumental. Grayson stood and extended his hand. The gesture was courteous, almost old-fashioned. The kind of thing you'd see in movies, not in real life. But his eyes held something deliberate, calculated. A man asking for help, disguised as an invitation to dance. Harper thought about the text in her clutch. About how secrets don't stay buried. About how sometimes the only way to survive a room is to stop hiding in plain sight. She took his hand. They danced for 90 seconds before the proposal became clear. Grayson moved like someone trained, precise, intentional, no wasted motion. His hand at her back was steady, neither invasive nor indifferent. He smelled like expensive cologne and rainwater, which didn't make sense until Harper realized he'd been outside. "My ex-partner is in this room," he said quietly, mouth close enough that only she could hear. "She's here with her new fiancé. She spent the last 4 months trying to convince the board that I'm unstable, that I've been spreading lies about her business practices. I need her to see me happy, settled, attached to someone who's obviously not a plant or a pity date. I need her to see that I've moved on. I'm a prop. You're not a prop. You're a woman who wanted to disappear, and I'm offering you camouflage. You dance with me tonight, we're cordial, we leave separately. By tomorrow, the gossip will be that I'm serious about someone. By next week, she'll have a dozen theories, and they'll all lead her attention away from the board." Harper pulled back enough to see his face. "What's the catch?" "No physical contact beyond what we're doing now. Hand, lower back, nothing more. If you feel uncomfortable, you say, 'I'm tired,' and we part immediately. No questions, no explanations. You're not signing anything. You're not bound to anything. This is one night." They turned. The room rotated past. The bride watching with curiosity, the mother nodding approval, Grayson's ex-partner frozen mid-conversation, noticing. "Why should I trust that?" Harper asked. "You shouldn't," Grayson said. "You should make a decision based on what you need, not on whether I'm trustworthy. You want to be invisible. I'm offering a way to become so visible that people stop looking for the real you. It's temporary camouflage." The song shifted. The band moved into something slower, more deliberate. "One night," Harper said. "One night. And you don't ask questions about me, and I don't ask about you." "Agreed. Though," he added, "I suspect you'll want to ask questions. People always do once they start pretending." Harper's hand tightened on his shoulder. "I'm not pretending. I'm surviving." "Same thing sometimes," Grayson said. The moment they turned back toward the center of the dance floor, the room's angle shifted. The groom's father stood, glass in hand, raising a toast. His voice cut over the quartet. "To new beginnings, to love that finds us when we stop looking, to—" He paused, noticing them. "To the people who remind us that connection can happen anywhere." A ripple of attention. Phone cameras emerged. The bride smiled. Not her polished smile, her real one. Grayson's ex-partner set her drink down very carefully on the table. "That's Marcus," Grayson murmured. "The father. He doesn't miss anything." They danced through the applause, through the shifting weight of the room's gaze. Harper felt the peculiar electricity of being watched while trying to look natural. Her left heel had begun to pinch 10 seconds in. Her hair was coming loose from its pins. The dress she'd chosen, a clean navy line, professional but not defiant, suddenly felt like she was wearing her resume. "You're tense," Grayson said. "I'm being studied." "You're being envied. There's a difference." He tilted his chin toward the bar. "That's Victoria. She's the bride's closest friend. She's been making a list of our tells. How many times you touch my arm, whether I'm guiding you or following, if you're smiling at me or past me. She's very thorough." "This is a performance. Everything tonight is a performance," Grayson said. "But you're not performing loneliness, that's the difference. Loneliness reads as truth. What we're doing reads as strategy, which is less true, which means it's closer to a real person." The song ended. He stepped back, released her waist, kept hold of her hand. The groom appeared at the edge of the floor, shaking his hand, thanking him for making my wife's designer feel like part of the family. The gratitude was genuine, the gaze grateful. One dance had rewired Harper from that woman alone to that woman with him. Enjoying the tension? Tap subscribe. The turn hits next. Dinner was served at 8:30. Grayson guided her to a table, not the designer's table, not the bachelor party stragglers table, but a carefully neutral spot between the Harrington aunts and the Cole cousins. Proximity without intrusion. The seating was designed to make it look accidental that they were together. Harper picked up her napkin. Underneath was her clutch, retrieved during the dance. The text in her phone was still there. Your secret doesn't stay buried. She excused herself and found the bathroom. The marble was cold, the lighting unforgiving. Harper stared at the phone, at the screenshot, at the date. 2019. 4 years. Her hands were shaking. She typed a response. Who is this? But didn't send it. Instead, she deleted the conversation and watched the word deleted appear. Final and stupid, because nothing on phones is ever actually deleted. When she returned, Grayson had ordered her a glass of white wine and was deep in conversation with the bride's uncle about municipal zoning laws, not because he cared about zoning laws, but because the uncle was drunk enough to be entertaining, and entertaining the uncle meant the aunt stayed content, which meant the table's attention stayed diffuse and collective. Harper designs gowns, he said, as if she'd been there the whole time. I was just asking Robert here about the building code in the garment district. I thought you might have insights. She didn't. But she nodded and listened to Robert's rambling explanation of something technical. Grayson's hand found the back of her chair. Not touching her, but present. The gesture created a shape, a couple, a unit. People adjacent to each other by choice, and not accident. You're good at this, Harper said later when Robert had been redirected to the bar by his wife. At what? At making people believe things that aren't true. Grayson set down his fork. He looked tired suddenly, the fatigue moving across his face like weather. I'm not making anyone believe anything. I'm creating an environment where a story becomes possible. Everything else, whether people believe it, want it, fear it, is their choice. He reached for his water glass and Harper noticed something. A scar on his left wrist, thin and precise. Barely visible. He caught her looking and didn't pull his hand away. People hurt people, he said quietly. Then people feel guilty. Then people pretend the hurt didn't happen or it happened differently. I'm not interested in that narrative anymore. I'm interested in people seeing me clearly. By lying. By being ambiguous, he corrected. There's a difference. I'm not telling them I love you. I'm not telling them I'm committed to you. I'm dancing with you and eating dinner near you. The rest is their interpretation. By 10 o'clock, the narrative had calcified. The groom's sister had invited Harper to brunch with the girls. The bride's mother had asked her to consult on a spring gala. One of Victoria's friends had requested her Instagram handle. Grayson had been photographed with his hand on Harper's shoulder, the photo already circulating in a group chat, already retold with admiration and speculation. And his ex-partner Margot had left the reception early. They stood on the balcony overlooking the city, watching the rain fall diagonal and silver. The temperature had dropped. Harper was cold, but she didn't mention it. Grayson's attention was somewhere else, on the skyline, on the past, on whatever victory he'd been hunting. You can leave now, Harper said. The job's done. I'll take an Uber. I know. But he didn't move. You know what's strange? The text you got at dinner, the one that made you run to the bathroom. Harper's breath stilled. You saw me. I was watching to make sure you were okay. You looked scared. I assumed it was a drunk ex or a parent or some version of bad news that justifies hiding in a bathroom at a society wedding. She didn't respond. I'm not going to ask you about it, Grayson continued. But I'm going to tell you something. Margot spent all evening looking for evidence that I'm unwell, that I'm unstable, that dancing with you was some kind of manic episode. She's gone now because she couldn't find that evidence. She saw clarity, not chaos. He turned to face her. Whatever that text is, it's not evidence of you being worth less. It's just a secret someone else decided to leverage. That doesn't change what I've been watching you do all night, which is survive a room full of people who could destroy you with a whisper. And you've done it with grace. Actual grace, not performed grace. Harper wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that grace wasn't possible, that the text had already changed something, that secrets don't stay buried, and once they surface, they ruin everything. But his eyes were clear and patient, and she was tired. "I don't understand why you helped me," she said. "Yes, you do," Grayson said. "You helped yourself. I just created the space." They didn't go to a hotel suite. They went to his apartment. Not a penthouse, but a converted warehouse in the arts district with concrete floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. The rain had stopped. The city below was wet and still. Grayson poured 2 glasses of water from the kitchen tap, which was a strange choice which meant something. Harper stood near the window and waited for the performance to shift into something else. It did. "The text," he said. "The one that scared you. It was about 2019. Harper didn't answer. "I know because Margot has done this before. Not to me, I'm too visible, too documented. But to people she perceives as threats to her narrative. Usually it's old employees, or people who know things about her business partnerships." He set the water glasses on the concrete counter. His movements were deliberate, careful. A man trying not to scare someone already frightened. "In 2019, Harper said slowly, "I was working in textile design for Westfield Hospital's recovery program. I designed adaptive clothing for surgical patients, garments that didn't tear open at the incision sites that allowed dignity during healing. It was good work. And I discovered that one of the attending physicians was falsifying discharge records. He was keeping patients longer than medically necessary to increase billable hours. When I found the pattern, inconsistencies between the physical records and the financial submissions, I reported it to compliance." She touched her collarbone. Under her dress, her fingers found the locket on its chain. The investigation went somewhere. The doctor was fired, but Margot was his partner at the time. They've been trying to discredit the case ever since, to frame the investigation as a false accusation, a vindictive report by a junior employee. "That's the leverage," Grayson said. "That's the nuclear option. If she can convince people I lied, that I fabricated evidence, then she reframes herself as a victim of my accusation. The original investigation becomes tainted. The doctor becomes sympathetic." Harper unclasped the locket. Inside, 2 things: a tiny photograph of a woman who looked exactly like her, and a key. "My mother gave me this. The key isn't for anything anymore. The safety deposit box is empty, but I kept it. Inside the photo is an inscription. Tell the truth. It is the only thing they cannot take from you." She died in 2015. She was a nurse. She understood institutional compromise. Grayson looked at the locket, not touching it. Margot sent the screenshot as a warning. As insurance. If I stay quiet about whatever she's planning with the board, the 2019 investigation becomes public, twisted, weaponized. But the investigation was real. "Yes. And you have documentation." Harper clasped the locket again. "Emails from compliance, the initial report, timestamps, the physician's financial records that I flagged, all of it. But documentation only matters if people believe you have a reason to present it. Margot's already framing me as someone with a grudge." Grayson walked to the window. The city lights reflected in his eyes. "I have something similar. Margot tried the same tactic with me 2 years ago. She claimed I stole intellectual property from a venture she invested in. She leaked partial contracts, edited them to remove context, and sent them to the board before I could explain. I spent 6 months defending myself. What happened? I hired an investigator, recovered the originals, documented the edits, found the person who'd done the doctoring work, presented everything to legal, and Margot was forced to issue a retraction or face a defamation suit. But it cost me money and time and trust. She's banking on the fact that most people don't have those resources." He turned back to her. "You do now." By morning, they had a plan with 3 anchors. Grayson's lawyer, a woman named Judith Chen who'd worked in healthcare compliance before shifting to private practice, began reconstructing the 2019 documentation. She pulled the original hospital report from public record. It had been filed with the state licensing board, which meant it was technically accessible, though buried under a decade of bureaucratic accumulation. The report included timestamps, policy citations, and the attending physician's ID number. "This is strong," Judith said over a video call at her office. "But it's also old." Margot's strategy will be to argue that even if the investigation was real, Harper's motivation is personal, and therefore any new claims should be discounted as revenge. Harper, sitting beside Grayson on his apartment couch, watched the screen. Judith had sharp eyes and a no-nonsense way of sitting. No wasted movement, no performed empathy. Just competence. "So, we need something current," Harper said. "We need 3 things," Judith corrected. "First, the physical evidence, which we have. Second, a neutral party who can verify the 2019 investigation and Harper's role in initiating it. Third, an authority figure who confirms that the investigation was conducted properly and the findings were legitimate." Grayson leaned forward. The hospital's HR director would remember her. "Possibly," Judith said, "but people move, retire, forget. What we need is someone documented as having received Harper's initial report. Someone whose name appears in the compliance file." Harper closed her eyes. She'd reported the discrepancies to 2 people: the compliance officer, Dr. Marcus Williams, who'd since retired, and the nursing director, Patricia Okonkwo, who'd been promoted twice and was now the chief medical officer at a different hospital system. "I know Patricia," Harper said quietly. "We still have coffee once a year. She won't lie for me, but she won't lie about me either." "Perfect," Judith said. "She's your neutral witness. Her position and reputation make her credible." The third piece was slower. Judith dug through New York State Department of Health records, federal healthcare fraud databases, and professional licensing boards. What emerged was a pattern. The attending physician, Dr. Nathan Valdez, had been investigated twice more after leaving Westfield, once for similar billing irregularities, once for prescription drug diversion. Neither had resulted in criminal charges, but both had resulted in mandatory clinical supervision and fines. The investigations had been quiet, departmental, not headline-making. "This is your authority anchor," Judith said. "State licensing records are public. The documentation shows that Harper's 2019 report wasn't an outlier. It was the first documented instance of a pattern that the state later confirmed independently. She didn't fabricate. She identified." She looked at Harper through the screen. "Margot's threat only works if you stay isolated and afraid. The moment you document your own evidence, you shift from accused to reporter." Grayson received an email at 9:47 a.m. on Wednesday. Subject: confidential, board meeting, recent allegations. The message came from Margot's lawyer. It detailed claims that Grayson had engaged in pattern behavior of misrepresenting professional relationships to advance business interests, and that he was currently conducting a relationship with a professional contact under false pretenses to establish leverage. Translation: Margot had discovered that Harper was the designer, not a chance meeting, not a romance. She was building a preemptive case that any defense Grayson mounted would be tainted by his alleged manipulation of Harper. But that wasn't the real damage. The real damage came at 1:15 p.m., when Harper received a call from Verity Chen, her largest client, a boutique hotel chain that commissioned custom linens, curtains, and guest robes. "Harper, I'm so sorry," Verity said, her voice tight and careful. "We've decided to pause our contract pending a review of your credentials." Harper's hand was steady, but her heart wasn't. "What review?" "We received a complaint about the authenticity of your background, something about an investigation at a hospital in 2019. We're just being cautious. Our legal team advises that we should verify before continuing." "From whom? Who sent the complaint?" "It came through a general inquiry form, anonymous. But Harper, it's detailed. It mentions specific dates and a doctor's name. It feels credible enough that our board wants clarity." The call ended. Within 4 hours, 2 more clients requested pause meetings. By evening, Harper's email was flooded with cancellation notifications from smaller vendors who'd seen social media posts suggesting she'd been involved in a professional misconduct case. Grayson found her on the balcony of his apartment at 7 o'clock, staring at the city lights. She hadn't cried, which somehow made it worse. "She's not trying to discredit you," he said. "She's trying to isolate you. If your income collapses, if your reputation fragments, then you're too desperate to fight back." "It's working," Harper said. "It's also evidence. Every client call, every cancellation, every post. It's all retaliation. It's all documentable. Margot just made a tactical error. She went public with a pattern instead of staying private with leverage." Harper turned to face him. Her locket was visible now, silver against her collarbone. "What if I can't recover from this? What if the damage is already done?" "Then we fight differently. We don't wait for her next move. We make the first move." The email arrived Friday morning at 9:59 a.m., just before Harper's all-staff meeting at the textile co-working space where she rented studio time, from Margot Hale, Legal Services. Subject: cease and desist notice, defamatory claims and tortious interference. The letter claimed that Harper had made false accusations against Margot's former business associate, resulting in reputation damage and financial loss. It demanded that Harper cease and desist from making any further claims, verbal or written, and threatened legal action for defamation, tortious interference, and harassment. The kicker: CC'd were 5 of her remaining clients. Harper sat in her studio, surrounded by bolts of Italian silk and mood boards she'd spent weeks developing. The seamstress who shared the studio space, an older woman named Elena, pretended not to notice Harper's hands shaking as she opened the letter. "Is it bad?" Elena asked eventually. "It's strategic," Harper said. "It's designed to make people afraid to work with me. Every client sees this letter and thinks, if I hire her, will I be sued next?" By noon, 3 of the 5 copied clients had called to cancel. By 3 o'clock, Harper had checked her bank balance and done the math. She had 4 months of rent if she didn't spend money on materials. 4 months to find new work, to rebuild a reputation, to survive. That evening, she didn't go to Grayson's apartment. She went home, a small 1-bedroom in a neighborhood where people minded their own business, and sat in the dark without turning on the lights. Her mother's locket was cold against her collarbone. She held it between her fingers and thought about her mother, who'd worked in hospitals for 40 years and had never let fear silence her, but also had never had to fight something this coordinated, this professional, this methodical. At 10:47 p.m., Grayson arrived without calling first. He had a key. She'd given it to him after Tuesday. He didn't turn on the lights. "Judith called," he said, sitting beside her on the couch in the darkness. "Margot's lawyer just filed a motion in court seeking an injunction. She's arguing that Harper's continued discussions about the 2019 investigation constitute ongoing harassment and defamation. So now it's not just threatening, it's legal." "It's escalation," Grayson said. "And escalation means she's afraid. If she were confident in her narrative, she wouldn't need a court to enforce silence. The fact that she's going this hard means there's something real she's protecting." He took Harper's hand in the darkness. "Tomorrow, we present the triad. We stop defending and we start documenting her offense." Patricia Okonkwo's office was on the 35th floor of a medical building in Midtown. The walls were a soft gray. A single painting of a garden hung behind her desk. She was older now than Harper remembered. Not aged, but settled, like someone who'd made peace with the compromises inherent in institutional life. "Harper," Patricia said, standing to embrace her. "It's been too long." They sat, and Harper laid out the situation without embellishment. Patricia listened with the practiced patience of someone who'd heard bad news professionally for decades. When Harper finished, Patricia went to her file cabinet and retrieved a folder labeled 2019 Compliance Investigation, Valdez, N. Inside was the documentation from that year. Harper's initial report, dated March 14th. Patricia's signature on the intake form. The compliance officer's investigation notes. "I kept this," Patricia said. Because cases like that matter. They're rare. Most people see institutional problems and stay silent. Harper, you were a junior designer. You had nothing to gain and everything to lose by reporting. She pulled out her laptop and opened a video call. On screen was Dr. Marcus Williams, the retired compliance officer, calling from somewhere warm, a beach house maybe, somewhere that didn't have winters anymore. At 76, he still had the precision of someone trained in investigation. I remember Harper, he said through the screen. I remember the investigation. We found discrepancies in 17 patient files, billing hours that didn't match discharge summaries, unnecessary overnight stays. It was pattern behavior, not accident. The state confirmed it independently in their follow-up review. Judith Chen appeared at this moment, physically in the office with a file that contained the original hospital report, physical evidence, a letter from Patricia Okonkwo on official hospital letterhead, confirming Harper's 2019 disclosure and the legitimacy of the investigation, neutral witness, and a certified state record showing that Dr. Valdez's licensure had been flagged twice more for similar irregularities. Authority. Here's what we're presenting, Judith said, laying out each document. Not to prove Margot is lying, that's secondary. We're proving that Harper told the truth in 2019, which means Margot's current threats are retaliation for Harper's historical accuracy. That's the crime, that's the pattern we document. She pulled out her phone and showed them a folder. Screen captures of social media posts linking Harper to professional misconduct. Emails from Margot's company to Harper's clients framing her as unreliable. The cease and desist letter itself. Timestamps showing the calls to Harper's clients aligned precisely with the anonymous complaints. Harassment, Judith said. Defamation, tortious interference. All of it traceable, all of it current, all of it provable, and all of it retaliatory. The injunction Margot filed, we're going to bury it by moving for sanctions against her counsel for filing in bad faith. Harper looked at the documents spread across Patricia's conference table. Her evidence, her story, no longer a secret. What happens now? Harper asked. Now, Judith said, we tell Margot that we have the complete picture. The meeting was scheduled for Monday at 2 p.m. in Judith's office conference room. Margot arrived with her lawyer, a man in a charcoal suit who carried a leather briefcase like it contained weapons. They didn't expect Harper to be there. They expected Grayson and Judith. They didn't expect documentation. Judith spread the materials across the table without preamble. The 2019 investigation was real, she said. Documented, thorough, and confirmed by state licensing records. Ms. Lane reported legitimate institutional fraud. That investigation resulted in professional consequences for your former partner, Dr. Valdez. Since then, you've conducted a campaign of retaliation, false claims, social media harassment, interference with Ms. Lane's business relationships, and threats of legal action designed to silence her. We have, Judith tapped each document, physical evidence, witness corroboration, and authority confirmation. Margot's lawyer stood. This is a negotiating tactic. My client is not obligated. Your client is obligated to withdraw the cease and desist within 48 hours, Judith continued, and to issue a public clarification that the 2019 investigation was legitimate. Failure to do so will result in a counterclaim for harassment, defamation, and tortious interference, plus sanctions against your firm for filing an injunction in bad faith. Margot didn't look at Harper, she looked at Grayson, and Harper saw something break in that look. Not reconciliation, but recognition. He'd beaten her. The game was over. What do you want? Margot asked. A public clarification, Judith said. Retraction of the cease and desist, and notification to Ms. Lane's clients that the complaints against her were unfounded. What happened next was bureaucratic, not dramatic. Margot's lawyer made a call. There was a 40-minute pause where everyone sat in Judith's conference room and didn't speak. Then the lawyer received an email and nodded. My client will comply. By Friday, Verity Chen called Harper personally. I'm so sorry. We received a clarification from Margot's office about the 2019 matter. It's clear now that you acted with integrity, not malice. We're reinstating your contract and would like to discuss an expanded engagement for the new property line. The other clients followed. By the end of the week, Harper had recovered 70% of her lost contracts, and 3 new inquiries had come in from people who'd heard about her standing firm. On Saturday, the state opened a compliance review into Margot's business practices related to prescription pharmaceutical distribution, the same issue Dr. Valdez had faced. It was administrative, quiet, but it would take her attention and resources for months. Proportional consequence. Institutional accountability. Not revenge, but reality. Grayson and Harper didn't celebrate. They met one more time at his apartment, and he handed her an envelope. "What is it?" she asked. "My withdrawal from the arrangement," he said. "My lawyer drafted it. You're released from any understanding. The dance was real, the dinner was real, but the original intention, using you as cover, I'm formally ending that. You're not a strategy anymore. You're just Harper." She opened the letter. It was brief, legal, and contained one line she wasn't expecting. Ms. Lane performed with integrity and dignity. The undersigned acknowledges that Ms. Lane was never a tool of this agreement, but rather a woman of principle who recognized one when it mattered. "You don't have to do this," Harper said. "I know, but I learned something from watching you. The truth is always better than the story we tell about it. I wanted to tell you that story clearly." They didn't kiss. They didn't promise anything. He walked her to the door, and she left with the letter in her hand and the locket at her throat, both of them objects of evidence that something true had happened. 3 months later, Harper launched a private website called The Record, a digital archive where design professionals, healthcare workers, and employees across industries could document institutional fraud without fear. They could upload communications, timelines, and evidence, all with privacy protection and legal oversight through a network of volunteer lawyers. It wasn't about revenge. It was about creating infrastructure for truth. Grayson attended the launch as a donor, not a hero. They'd moved past the dance, past the arrangement, into something quieter and more real. Occasional dinners, no expectations, the kind of friendship that forms when 2 people have survived something together and didn't need to perform it. On the day of the launch, Harper wore the locket visible, not hidden. Inside was still the tiny photo of her mother and the inscription, "Tell the truth. It is the only thing they cannot take from you." She'd added something else. A date. March 2025, the month she stopped hiding. The morning after the launch, a package arrived at her studio. Inside was a piece of silk, a bolt of deep navy, the exact shade of her dress the night of the wedding. With it was a note in Grayson's handwriting. "For something new, something that doesn't require translation or apology." Harper let the silk unroll across her work table. She thought about the woman who'd sat alone at a wedding, planning escape. That woman wasn't gone, but she'd evolved. She'd learned that visibility wasn't weakness, that telling the truth required courage, and courage required community, and community required people willing to stand in the light without shame. She texted Grayson, "Dinner next week? Real one, no strategy." His response came immediately. "Absolutely, bring the locket. I want to hear the real story." Harper smiled. The real story was simpler than the secret. A woman discovered that the people worth keeping around were the ones who'd watched you survive, who believed you without requiring proof, and who'd step back when the moment demanded clarity over comfort. She began to cut the navy silk, not for a wedding dress, for something different, something that belonged to her, not to a narrative someone else was controlling. Some silences are protection, some are prison. The difference is whether you chose it or someone else chose it for you. Boundaries are not walls. They are borders between your story and theirs. And dignity is never about being nice. It's about being truthful, even when the truth costs something. What secrets are you protecting that aren't yours to keep? If this gave you courage, subscribe and tell us. What would you have done?